Greetings everyone, I am Keyframe, and I look at point A, point B, and everything in between. Today, I will be discussing my drawing process on my two new Rarity pieces, from sketch all the way to finished product. So, let's get a move on! So, first things first, I drew rough sketches of both regular Rarity and punk Rarity. From the beginning, I imagined them as complementing pieces, looking over at each other. From there, I cleaned up the sketch of normal Rarity, defining her head shape and making minor changes to her expression. I found, while cleaning up the rough and adding in the glasses, that giving normal Rarity a calming, welcoming expression looked much more appealing than the naughty librarian look she originally had. I personally think the hardest and most tedious part of working on the first bust was inking Rarity's mane. I mean, I had to turn off the recording because I was spending so long just chipping away at the swirls. But I guess it was worth it because it looks pretty good to me. So, as many of you may have noticed with my recent art pieces, I tend to not shade with black or gray. I don't know, to me it tends to muddy up the vibrancy of the piece and generally makes the shading less noticeable. I bring this up because I notice people tend to use gray or black to shade white-furred characters, such as Rarity or Celestia. Personally, I would recommend using either a generally dark, cool shade of blue, like ultramarine or navy, or a warm violet, like plum or mulberry. For normal Rarity, I stuck with generally analogous shades of blue, ranging from ultramarine to cyan. They gave the piece a softer, more subtle look, while still bouncing off the warmer violets in her mane, and helping the bright red of her glasses pop off the piece. Now I go to shade the mane. Shading hair is always one of my favorite parts in drawing, which is probably why so many of my character designs have very big and bold hairstyles, but that's a topic for another video. For creating the hair effect that is so often seen in my work, I use the fine round 1 brush in Paint Tool Psi, setting the bristles at around 14 to 16. I don't exactly know why, honestly, but that tends to be the sweet spot that gives the hair the right amount of detail without it going into the uncanny DeviantArt anime OC shading valleys. You know what I'm talking about. After giving the hair a base texture, I decrease the brush size and start darkening the areas that overlap or where the hair would come out of the head. For violet hair like Rarity, I tend to shade with a dark green or teal, then lightening parts up with either a powder blue, much like her eyeshadow, or pink. Once I was done with the shading, I merged everything together, made a clipping group layer on top of it, and gave it the signature keyframe bubble shine. Trademark. Not really. I can't afford trademarks. Trademark. And here we have our first rarity. If I had to pick out my favorite part of the piece, it would have to be the limited color scheme. I am someone who loves to use a lot of hues, so keeping this one on the simple side was not only a fun challenge, but shows the inherent beauty of Rarity's base design. It also helps complement the more bold techniques that will be used in the Punk Rarity piece, which we will get to after the break. Welcome back! Now that we have done normal Rarity, it is time to get to Punk Rarity, the form that has spawned almost as much fan art as Flutterbat. There wasn't much difference from the rough sketch to the cleanup with this one. The only real change was giving her a grin instead of just a closed smirk to help give more similarities to the normal Rarity piece. And, I don't know why, but I had such a struggle with the ear position in this one. I think it was since her head is tilted up slightly, but gob, I had to redraw it so many times, as you can see here. Now, while I stayed pretty close to the canon design with normal Rarity without much departure outside of the thicker lips, which you can see in both pieces, I took a lot more artistic liberty with Punk Pone here. I gave her a Dan Avidan eyebrow cut, a little beauty mark, and changed her eyeshadow to the teal in her hair rather than her normal powder blue, which, if you ask me, they should have done that in the first place, but whatevs. Like I said before, shading with either cool blue or warm violet really pops off the white, or the off-white that Rarity is. Originally, as you can see, I was going to use the same bluish tone I used to do the shadows on the first Rarity piece, but I found that the pink really looked good with the new green and yellow tones that were added into the design. Not only that, it helped make this running warm hue in both of their palettes, even though this one doesn't have the bright red glasses. So it all worked out in the end. Now, her mane was so much more of a trip to shade than the OG one. I wanted to go really bold for this, so I amped up the colors, using a range of blues, yellows, oranges, purples, and pinks, which compared to the 3 colors I used in the first Rarity's mane, was a freeing experience. With a couple small details, such as adding a leather texture to the jacket and added some shadow and shine, Punk Rarity is complete! I loved how this design turned out, especially after I put it in Photoshop and added the spray paint in the background. I usually do not like putting pinks with Rarity, but with this look, it totally works. Together, we have two facets of a fashionable personality. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a new thing to try, and I found it fun, if not a bit challenging to articulate my process. And I would love to talk more about how I make the art that I make, so if there is anything you guys want to know further about how or what do I do to make things, like magic effects, shading, character design, tell me in the comments below. Anyways, I am Keyframe, and we looked from point A to point B and everything in between on how I drew Rarity and Punk Rarity. See ya, everyone!